All right, everyone, it is interview time. Okay, so this is a return guest, Dr. Allison Ash. And guess what? Her episode that we did like 2 or 3 years ago, a while ago, when we could be in person back in the day, called How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ, still to this day is our number one listened to and downloaded episode ever. We can see the stats and people love that episode. Oh, Perry loves it too. Yeah, he does have his bark collar on. Oh, he really loves it. It's my dog, if you can hear him. Sometimes these mics don't pick it up, and so when I say our dogs are barking, they're like, we don't hear anything.
Nothing's happening.
Anyways, so we are so stoked to finally have you back. The last time we were in person because you're here in the Bay Area, but now we have to do it over Zoom because it's 2020 and well, life is weird. So I know that you shared who you are, and we talked a little bit about it in our intro, but you shared who you are in our previous episode. Can you tell us a little bit more about that story? How did you get into the world of human sexuality, specifically the field you teach at Stanford, you do all kinds of things?
Yeah, well, I really believe in experiential education. And when it comes to intimacy, intimacy is a learned interactional skill. So it's very hard, as much as we want, to learn intimacy just from podcasts or from books or from videos. Like, we need to have education that's offering us exercises and opportunities to practice skills and to explore where our lack of confidence is and where our insecurities are pieces of shame, and what do we need to feel more confident, more empowered, and more capable to have the kinds of interactions and sexual experiences that we want. And so really what I want to do is work on that on all levels. So I offer coaching for individuals and couples. I teach workshops and courses and retreats. And I think that there's something that's really powerful about doing this work where when we learn these intimacy skills, then they're transferable to all areas of our life. And so I think for me, it was around my own personal journey of having to learn intimacy skills because intimacy wasn't modeled very much for me and my family. And then seeing how important these skills were for impacting every area of my life. And then wanting to help other folks who might, for whatever reason, feel like they are also lacking in these skills, gain them and feel empowered as a result.
Mm.
And this episode, which I'm so excited to talk to you about, is get out of your head in the bed
Which
or
we
in the
both resonate.
bedroom or
We both resonate with that too.
Not
But
only because it rhymes, but because it is a difficult, challenging thing, especially whether you're partnered or you're semi-partnered or you're dating
or
in
you're just
times of
masturbating.
or you're
in your head.
masturbating.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is kind of exciting. And that is an entry point to the first question, which is what are things folks can do that get stuck in their heads? What can they do during sex?
Like, why are they doing it? What's going on? What's the prob?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you both know we can get stuck in our head around a huge variety of issues. Obviously, there's performance anxiety, first and foremost. How do I look? How do I sound? Am I pleasing them? Are they bored? Do they like it? I mean, all of that. We can get stuck in our head, certainly if we have body shame, or if we have shame around our desires or around what our pleasure looks like. Um, and then, of course, there's like a whole host of things that have nothing to do with sex at all. We could be in our head around our to-do list and did we turn off the coffee machine and our work project for the next day and the stressful conversation we have to have with a good friend, right? It can just be oftentimes not having time to transition from work mode or stress mode or parenting mode into being in our lover body and our emotional body and our sensation and feeling body.
Okay, so something that came up for me. What do you think sex was like 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago when we didn't have these busy lives okay, this is,
Me caveman, me
and I can't
have
speak
big
for all
hard.
humans at that point, but
I mean,
living in community where people helping to raise each other's children. I mean, this is what we believe, and we look at modern day tribal cultures. This is kind of the case, right? So, what do you think sex is like there? You think that people were as in their heads as they are now now? Do you think this is a product of these busy modern day civilized, I'm doing air quotes, advanced way of living in urban society, and that contributes to us being so in our heads with our busy lives? Do you think sex would be more free if we were, 2000 years ago?
I wonder. I think that's a very interesting question. On one hand, sure, I imagine that there were a lot of stresses that aren't relevant a thousand years
Like
or 100,000.
survival.
Right. But
Yeah.
yeah, but then there are these other survivals, like other issues like survival and food. But really, the place that I go to is just thinking about how universal shame is. And shame is a evolutionary necessary emotion. When we were in tribal societies, if we were excommunicated from the tribe, we would die.
Yeah.
And so those of us that were shame adverse were more likely to survive and pass on our genes. So I think that the experience of having shame, feeling shame, can put you in your head for
Mm.
sure. And I don't think that that's unique to us in 2020.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that and this is shameless sex, so that's perfect. And I guess
Yeah.
why that popped up is totally off topic, but I went to a meditation retreat, and but when you could go to retreats and be in person with people back in the day, the good old days, and for 5 days of silence, I remember sitting down outside next to a rosemary bush, and there were some bees doing their little pollinating business, and it was as if I could finally really hear them and see them for the first time because my mind was so focused and slowed down. And part of me was like, oh, this is kind of the original way where there aren't all these intense screens and distractions, and I have to get to this place at this time because my watch tells me so, and if I'm late I'm going to get fired. And that there was
Living
maybe
in the stories.
living the stories and the busyness, and that maybe there's more ease in presence, which is what we see such a challenge in sex. As we were talking about, get out of your head in bed, is we're talking about presence, getting in your body, being present, and moving away from all of the blah 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 blah, all that stuff. So okay, so what are some of the consequences of getting stuck in your head during sex? How does this affect sex?
Well, on a pleasure level, being in your head definitely inhibits your capacity for pleasure because pleasure is felt in the body. And the more that you can inhabit your body and notice the sensations, immerse in the sensations that you're experiencing, and focus on the pleasure that you're feeling, the more pleasure you're going to experience. And so, certainly, if you want to increase your capacity for pleasure, it's an important thing to learn to get out of your head. And then, of course, there's a lot of sexual issues that people can experience if they're chronically in their head. Erectile dysfunction is a common one. Research shows that men with erectile issues tend to be less aware of how aroused they are because they're so worried about getting and maintaining an erection. It becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy. Anorgasmia, which is challenges around climaxing, right? The brain can shut down and make it difficult for you to have that release. I often say the hardest way to orgasm is to try, right? So if you're in your head, particularly about, am I going to come? When am I going to come? I really want to come. Oh my God, I feel so much pressure. They really want me to come. It's going to make it much harder to have an orgasm. And then vaginismus, which is painful penetration of the vaginal canal, which can happen with involuntary muscle spasms that come from muscle tension, and anxiety and stress create muscle tension. And so being in the body can also help you relax. Whereas when you're in your head, that's when you can spiral in the anxiety or the shame.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that embodiment is something that it's a term that's thrown around way more now than ever before. We talk about it a lot on the podcast. So for those folks that maybe are tuning in, obviously, I would love to dive deeper into what is embodiment and also what are ways that we can get out of our head. It's easy to say, but how can we actually do that?
Yeah, definitely. And I have some tips for folks, whether they're having sexy solo time or they're having solo time with lovers or partners, because I think that there are things that we can do in each of those situations. But yeah, I love starting with embodiment. I like to think of that as a felt sense of being in our body in the present moment. And so what that means is it's noticing your sensations and emotions and how they're shifting and changing and how they often relate to each other. So we feel our emotions as felt sensations in the body. And it's a skill, which means that like any skill, we can develop and improve it with practice. It doesn't mean that you're either born with it or not born with it. And just to normalize it, it can be very challenging to be embodied because we are in a thinking culture that prizes us for being rational and logical and doesn't teach us how to be in the body. In fact, in many cases, it can devalue the wisdom of the body. And so we stop learning how to pay attention to it and how to interpret these signals. Um, and I think that this is true for men who have been socialized to not be emotional and sensitive. It's true for folks also where their bodies can be an unpleasant or unsafe place to be, whether that's from chronic pain, having gender dysphoria, having experiences of abuse and trauma. All of these things can make it hard to be embodied. But when we can be embodied, it means that we have access to being able to focus on sensations and pleasure as a form of erotic material. In addition to maybe your fantasies and porn and memories, being able to focus on embodied sensory-based pleasure is a huge resource for us to be able to have. And so these tips that I'm going to be able to give to help you get out of your head will be useful. But certainly in addition to that, doing any kind of embodiment exercise. And an embodiment exercise is something where you are focusing on the sensations in your body while you're, and it could be something that's active or something that's passive. So some examples of active embodiment exercises could be shaking and noticing the sensations that you're feeling, maybe before you shake, as you're shaking, and right after you shake, or stretching or tensing your muscles and relaxing them. And then more passive ones could be doing a body scan meditation where you're just laying still and kind of noticing the sensations that are in your body at rest, or focusing on your breathing and noticing how the breathing is impacting your body. And if you do, and even anything that you're doing day-to-day basis, taking a shower, washing the dishes, working out, if you're doing it with this kind of focused attention of noticing the sensations in your body, and like any meditation, noticing when your attention has drifted and coming back, that's an embodiment exercise. And doing these throughout the day in your everyday life will certainly impact your experiences in the bedroom as well.
I recently listened to the podcast with, I forgot it's James Nestor. It's on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he wrote the book Breath. And he was talking about, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but about mouth breathing and how we're actually designed to be breathing through our nose, and that we have this filtration system that keeps us healthy, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Once listening to that, every time I walk alone now, I pay attention to my breath through my nose. And I'm now walking, so I can walk and pay attention to my feet on the ground. I can be lost in thought and all these different things and all of the, so I'm not focused on one thing. But I've noticed that now that I brought my focus to this thing, because I'm paying attention to this skill, because it is easy for me to breathe through my nose. I'm walking in this different embodied way. And so as you were saying that, I was thinking of, how a lot of people spend their time is not embodied. It is, distracted, disconnected, or multitasking or something like that, or really heavy in mind, and especially with screen culture. And then I thought about how you could even like watch TV in an embodied way, where like just watch TV, but notice like the sensations in your body. But then you wouldn't be able to really focus on the show. Like you wouldn't know what's going on in the show because most of us can't multitask in that way. But I do see that, especially right now with COVID stuff going on, people could use so much more embodiment, especially in sex, but just in life in general. It is time to up the embodiment game. So what are some tips here? So you said you share some tips for solo tips and for masturbation, self-pleasure. And then also we have some tips that you can share for couples or triads or for playing with other people too.
Yeah. So the first thing that I'd say is it's really valuable to explore your own body. And you can do this both visually and tactily. So exploring your body in a mirror. And here's the thing, is it might be tempting to focus on what you don't like, or even what you do like. And what I would want to encourage listeners to do is, rather than focusing on what is attractive or not attractive, I want you to focus on what you find pleasing. And this could be textures, shapes, colors. My favorite is responsiveness. How does my skin respond as I touch it? And you know, one thing that you also might want to do if you have a pussy out there is ask your gyno to leave you in the stirrups with the speculum in and the light on, and bring a mirror and take some time just exploring yourself and see what you look like. And you can also explore yourself with touch. And here's the thing is that I think it's valuable to not just explore your genitals, but explore how you can create pleasure throughout your body. So pulling your hair and scratching your head, grabbing your inner thighs, tugging on your ear, grabbing your breasts or playing with your nipples, spanking your own ass, right? There are all sorts of ways that we can really explore our body, which actually really brings me into this next piece, which is masturbate mindfully. And I think that, you know, exploring your body visually, I like to separate, because self-pleasure is any act of giving yourself pleasure. It doesn't have to be masturbation, which tends to be more genital focused and oftentimes more orgasm focused. So if you're taking a shower and you're extra luxuriating in rubbing soap all over your body, and you decide you want to use your hands instead of the loofah because you really want to feel your body as you're soaping up, that's self-pleasure, right? Okay, but mindfully masturbating is this idea of focusing on the sensations as you are masturbating. And studies from all the big institutions, Harvard, Yale, et cetera, show that they show that meditation actually creates changes in the brain structure that seems to deactivate what's called the me centers of the brain, which are the centers of the brain that have these self-referential thoughts. So certainly if you have a hard time getting out of your head, and if you're focusing on performance a lot, then mindful masturbation is going to be really useful to you. And I often say that when we're having sexy time, you can focus on whatever form of erotica works for you. Maybe it's porn, maybe it's your fantasies, maybe it's Shameless Sex podcasts. Listen to whatever gets you hot, but then pause it for a moment and then turn to the sensations in your body and see if you can focus on that longer and longer. If you start to lose your erection or lose your turn on, then go back to your erotica and then go back to just focusing on the sensations, and see how long you can increase those sessions of being able to use your own sensations as your erotic material for your own turn on.
I love that advice. And what came up, I thought about, so I have some friends, a few
I
of
have a
them.
friend.
I have some friends out there. But in particular, some folks that have been in relationships for 15 or 20 years. And one of them that comes up while you're speaking on this doesn't have to deal with masturbation, but she tells me, she's like, I just don't want to fuck my husband anymore. Like, I just know it's coming. I know when he's horny, and I'm like, oh, I'm dreading it. I'm like trying to give some advice to her. And I'm like, maybe you're too in your head about it. What are the things that are keeping you from, because you obviously adore this person, you love him, you're sexually attracted to him. And I don't know if any of the listeners out there have this experience, but it's not one or two friends, it's multiple
I
friends.
think a lot of them have this
So
experience.
yes,
Yeah.
which I'm not trying to generalize, but I was just saying from my friend that I'm going to tell her to listen to this episode too. So I guess if you're partnered, especially long-term relationships, what are some ways that you can get out of your head in the bedroom with these long-term partners that can get in the way of having like really sexy, amazing experiences that maybe they were having before, but just aren't now?
Yeah, I love that question. I think the first thing is to consider set and setting, right? So your mindset is super important. And oftentimes we don't transition from our day-to-day roles into sexy time roles. And thinking about what is it that's going to help you feel more embodied, and maybe creating a ritual that's going to signify that switch for you. So turning your phone on airplane mode, putting on a sensual playlist, altering the lighting, having a glass of wine, dancing to your favorite song, but actually doing something that feels pleasurable and good to you, that's a scaffolding step to sexy time. can be really useful. And also, I think it's really valuable to consider, do you want to be having sex right now? I think a lot of us push through and we do it because we feel guilty or we want to please our partner, or we think we're into it and then we realize we're not into it and we endure and we try and stick it out. And I think that if we override this signal over and over again, you're going to start resenting sex and you're going to start resenting your partner, and your sex life will shut down. So learning that it's okay to say no, learning the power of foreplay, and that foreplay doesn't just have to be before sex, but that we can have uh, kind of non-linear sexual experiences where maybe you're making out and that's as far as it goes, or maybe you finger each other, or maybe you have oral sex, but it doesn't always have to go to intercourse. I think that can be incredibly liberating, because going from nothing to sex can feel like a huge leap. But if I know I can just make one step and then get off the train if I want to, then I'm much more inclined to explore and see what might evolve.
Mhm.
But I think certainly focusing on mindset and setting, and what is it that you need. Maybe you want some massage or to just have soft touches on the body, but thinking about longer escalation patterns, particularly for long-term relationships, particularly in the era of COVID when we're around our partners all the time. We need to plan for sexy time, and we need to plan for longer and more varied escalation patterns and non-linear escalation patterns, so that it feels fresh, it doesn't feel predictable, and that we can feel inclined to explore because we don't feel like we're signing up for more than we can bargain for.
Mm.
That's good advice.
I love that.
That's really good.
Yeah, I had a visual that came up with April when you were sharing that too,
Get a
and
visual of me
a visual of
naked.
you
Oh,
naked taking
wow.
How,
off your mom coat, because I was thinking of, just people at moms and dads, or people in their everyday roles, and sex becomes a certain thing and they can't take off their role. So I was envisioning you wear your mom coat in the day. You're a mom, I raise the kids, or you wear your mom coat, or maybe it's not mom coat. I'm the
I don't feel
boss.
sexy. I've been doing the dishes and the laundry all
Or I'm
day.
just the boss queen woman that is getting all the work done. Like, I make the money, and I go to work and I come home and I wear that same coat, that jacket home. But when I get in the bedroom, I actually intentionally hang that up outside. And then I meet with my partner and I'm like, okay, here's the role I'm landing in right now. And what role are you landing in now? And how can we come there? Because I think that is a common one where people they get stuck in their own thing, in their own roles, and then their partner also starts to kind of visualize them in that role. So that's one thing that came to mind there. And then the other piece of what you shared that I think is really valuable, obviously it's presence. Like, presence is a really big thing here too. But it's like there's intention is really big, and practice. Like,
Mhm.
practice is really big, in that we are ever changing, and oftentimes get stuck with this idea that sex needs to be one way and it's one thing. And in fact, like you said, it's non-linear. When you broaden it and then you show up to see what's available right now. And I love that advice, especially in the time of COVID, of like, some people are so anti-scheduling sex. Like, it's not sexy, but
Well, what about creating ritual though? That I love
or
that.
just scheduling
That
intimacy,
suggestion.
but it doesn't have to be penetration. It doesn't have to be things in orifices. It
That's
doesn't.
right.
It could just be what's available now. But what we're scheduling is connection and intimacy and a practice
We're
of being
turning off
present.
Netflix
Yeah, that screens
Mhm.
are off, and like you said, maybe we can put a little porn here and there, and then we can come back, and porn here and there, and then
erotica,
come
whatever,
back. Yeah, and so but it's okay. I want to just say, so listeners that are listening right now, they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
What is your advice for people who, and I would be one of them, I know, as someone who's a meditator who constantly practices being present in sex with partners and present in sex with myself, and it's always challenging. It gets easier the more I practice. What would you say to those folks? Like, what are your words of wisdom?
Yeah. And I think it's just important to note that there isn't one trick that's going to work for everyone. So I have lots of tricks, and some of them are going to work for some of you, and not all of them are going to work for any of you, and that's okay. But one that I think a lot of people find helpful is narrating the experience internally. So it's kind of telling yourself a story in your head of what's happening moment to moment. You can do this whether it's solo time or time with somebody else. So
It's like David
um,
Attenborough with a like a
exactly
nature
right.
film. I love that. Oh my
Exactly.
God, I love
Now
it.
he's running his hand up my thigh and
Oh
he's
my God.
spreading my
And look,
legs
there's a
I just
apart.
penguin
got
in the room.
tingles from this. That's so good.
March
Okay.
of the Penguins. Wait, no, that's Morgan Freeman. Wrong one.
Yeah, it gives your brain something to focus on. And you know, you can even externalize it if you're into dirty talk with your lover and partner. I'm noticing my breath is starting to quicken, and I'm feeling my stomach flutter, and my skin is tingling with anticipation. Like, it can be really erotic to share it too if you're comfortable with it, but even doing it internally helps you stay focused.
Mm, I love that. And
That's so good.
I even thought about doing that and making space to also share boundaries. Like, oh, my skin's starting to tingle, and then, oh, yes, yes. Oh, actually, I'm feeling. Oh, wait, can we stop for a minute right now? I'm feeling like a boundary coming up right now, and how you could
Yes.
explore that. And so, anyways, I'm just
I
teeing
love
this up,
that.
obviously, for myself.
I want more. I want more,
Well, and
Allison. That's so good.
and that, you know, that actually ties right into redirection, which is super key. A lot of us might still want to be having sex, so we're not enduring the sex overall, but we are enduring touch that's not quite working for us for whatever reason. And I mean, how many of you out there are like, can you go a little softer? And it's still not soft enough. And maybe you're like, okay, a little softer, and it's still not soft enough. And you're like, oh, fuck it. You
Yeah,
just
just
give
gonna
up
go
and you
with
just,
it. Or
yeah, you just,
yeah,
exactly, you
yeah.
started enduring. And so, you know, I think that learning how to redirect both verbally and non-verbally is really key. So non-verbal redirection could be putting your hand over their hand and changing how it's moving, or moving it to a different location. Or it could be moving your body in a way that creates access to different parts. Um, or you could say verbally. And I think really when you're offering a verbal redirection, it's so helpful to name what is feeling really good and what would also feel really good. So both
Mm.
need to be truths, but doing it in that kind of format, it makes it really easy to hear. So for example, I really love your attention, and what would feel really good is if your touch was a little steadier.
Oh my God, her shit
Mm.
sandwich is way better than my shit sandwich. That's what April calls it. I
I
don't
do. I
call
call
it
it
that.
a shit
Yeah.
sandwich.
But it's like
Yeah.
it sounds sexy though the way you did that. And
Mhm.
it's like,
And
oh,
mindful
yeah. And oh,
and not harsh.
and I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I really love that you want to be close, and I'm feeling like I'm just available for some sweet cuddles.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the practice comes in, because it's really imperative that you don't offend the partner, right? Because that can shut down any of the sexy flow that's happening, where you're
Mhm.
like,
Well, that's the
yo, you're touching me
fear.
too hard. And
Yeah.
you're like, ugh,
Yeah.
or right. So that, and that is really, but it takes some thoughtfulness and practice to, and there may be folks out there that have had a partner that's been touching them in a specific way for many years or months or whatever that looks like, and they've maybe been too afraid, as you were saying, living in the fear, to say something, and they've endured. So that's really great. You can practice on your own while you're masturbating.
And people are
Or
also just afraid to say something, even if they say it, they're like, I'm afraid, even no matter what I say, I'm too much. It's too
mhm.
much. They're not going to want to do it. And to just know that, one, there's skill, there's tools. We are not responsible for everyone else's reactions. We can say something the most lovingly and most gentle and give them the best shit sandwich ever. And they could still respond with a me thing.
Mhm.
And we are not responsible for that, but what we are responsible for is our bodies, our agency, our pleasure, which in turn makes better sex for the other people that we are being intimate with. So I get that, like, it's like a perfect balance. I don't like the word perfect, that's too much. A balance of being true to ourselves and advocating for that, while also being intentional and skilled in the way we speak, so that it can land in a way that they can take in, and then everyone hopefully wins.
That's right. That's right. And I'm a big believer that we do not want to prioritize emotional caretaking over our own pleasure, because then we're starting to deny our own experience and our own truth. And as you said, that's not going to lead to pleasurable experiences for anybody.
Mhm.
And so certainly don't endure. Name the corrections that you need and want. And one thing that you can do is you can actually just set up a time with your lover partner where your intention is to focus on exploration rather than pleasure. And so you can say, I would really like to explore my body, or I would really like to explore new ways that we can touch and pleasure each other. And can we go slow and just check in a lot and talk to each other, and just have a session that's really focused on communication. And there's an exercise that I think is really useful called the this or that game. And if listeners out there want a little demo video showing how it works, just come to my website, turnon.love, send me a message, and I'd be happy to share it with you. But essentially, the way that the this or that game works is you offer two kinds of touch, and you say, do you like it like this, or do you like it like that? And the receiver can evaluate the kinds of touch, which puts them into their body, because in order to evaluate two kinds of touch, you have to get into your body. And it opens up lines of communication, and it creates it's framing it as a game, makes it playful and it's not, you're offering touch that somebody is intentionally not going to love, because in order to discover the yeses, you have to discover the nos. And that's a really important reframe, and it normalizes that. And so, yeah, whatever it is that helps you get into a place of exploration, a shared reality of exploration, can help really remove the pressure and open us up to recalibrating these things that we might have just gotten used to over time.
And you can play this song. It's like this and like that and like this, Santa, if you want to.
While
I
you're
need
doing
to
it.
have that like fading in and out
Yeah.
of
Yeah, like, hey.
Or no, I was thinking of, isn't there the one, a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Is that the one with Christopher Walken doing the dance? Like
I
a,
don't know, but I like
it's a
watching you do the
Moby, it's like a
dance.
Moby thing,
Oh,
I'm pretty
baby.
sure.
There's another thing that you could do is, which is actually work with someone such as yourself,
Yes.
right? An intimacy
Mhm.
coach, someone that can help you get back on course. And I know you have a lot of offerings and folks can take your classes. I know that you also have a 10-week course coming up. I would love for our listeners to be able to find you, to take your classes. And will you just talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I have a bunch of shorter workshops ranging from 2 to 4 hours. They're all recorded and available immediately for anybody who wants access to them. You can go to my website to find the full list of them. Get Out of Your Head in Bed is available, as well as How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ and How to Be an Intuitive Lover, which are two past episodes that I've gotten to do with you both. So you can check those out immediately. And then in January, my course that I've been teaching at Stanford called Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills, which is a 10-week course, I'm really excited to be offering outside of Stanford, publicly available for folks. That'll be starting in late January. And so feel free to go to my site for more information on that as well. And then I'm offering virtual coaching for individuals and couples and triads and more. And so if you want more support getting out of your head in bed, or with any other aspects of developing physical, emotional, and sexual intimacy, please feel free to reach out. I offer 15-minute complimentary calls so we can discuss a little bit around how I can support you and help you achieve your goals.
Didn't you mention before we started recording that pre-COVID it was 30% couples and then it went up to 80% after COVID, just with your
Yes.
coaching, which
Yes.
is, it's great that people have the opportunity, no matter where they are, to have you as a coach, because you are actually so incredible. Just the way that you, I feel like, can translate a lot of opportunity within relationships and partnerships within sexual realms to folks is really
You can speak to
awesome.
all folks too, right? It's
Yeah.
like you can speak to the woo folks, you can speak to the
Yeah.
mainstream folks, and then you're
To
also very
Stanford,
to
Stanford
Stanford
alumni.
academia, and then you can
Yes.
also speak to all on the diversity of sexuality, right? So like I know that you're very inclusive in your language and in your work. So
You're just
Thanks. I
amazing.
appreciate
We
that.
just yes.
I
Talk.
received the love. And, I also want to say, for the single folks out there that are feeling really lonely during the times of COVID, I see you. And I am very lucky to have gotten to start a beautiful and deeply rich and nourishing relationship in the era of COVID. It is possible. I'm not the only one. And so I have ideas around how you still can find connection in very COVID safe ways. So don't feel like this pandemic is a death sentence to your sex life or to your capacity to have intimacy in relationships.
Love that. Love you, everyone. go check out Allison's offerings. Dr. Allison Ash, I want to give you a standing ovation, a high five through Zoom, a clap, everyone's hands
Right back
together.
at
You're
you.
amazing. We love you. Thank you for sharing. And this is actually, I think, one of my favorite episodes, and I just adore all of your information and who you are as a human. You're just incredible.
I mean,
Thank you.
who does this not speak to? I have not met one person who's
I
like, oh,
think it,
I've never been in my head when I've had
yeah.
sex. I'm like, oh, okay, you were an alien. So,
And that's right. Knowing
yeah.
that means that it's just like can help us de-shamify the
Yeah.
experience, right?
We all go through this.
That's
Yes.
right. I just love talking with the two of you. This was
Yeah.
such a joy. Thanks for having me on your podcast again.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you. And go ahead and de-shamify your wine drinking right now as well. And go check out marginswine.com and see why Amy and I shamelessly drink Margins wine regularly. Even on this episode, we drank some. I'm not going to lie, okay? We're
Woman
shameless.
owned and operated
Women owned and
wine.
operated, and
Boutique wine.
we love what she's doing. Boutique small batch wines. Go to marginswine.com, sign up for the newsletter, be in the know, and you can save some money, honey, because we know you like to. Go to our website and check out the coupon codes, and she ships almost everywhere, so yeah, get some. And
A little bit of this,
I'm just going to
that.
say that. Yeah, it's like this and like that and like this. And if you haven't done any of this or that yet, go onto iTunes and give us 5 stars, because we do read every single one of your beautiful reviews. Some are raving, some perhaps not as much, but we still love you and we send you the best. And thank you for being a shameless sex revolutionary, y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.